Hello everybody and welcome to ESL Legendary Series here at IM Katowice. My name is Nimsh and I'm here with Lothar, Toaden and Ekop to bring you this amazing tournament. We actually have Elki and Aquablood with us as well, not joining us at the desk though.
Oh.
What a shame.
Not
yet.
at this time, not at this time. They will join us in just a moment. But first, how are you doing guys? Enjoying Poland, Katowice? Lothar, I will not ask you this question.
I live here.
Sol.
Yeah, I'm loving Poland. I've been here a few times. First time in Katowice, first time here for Hearthstone purposes. So nice to take in a new city as always. One of the great things about being part of the esports community is all the traveling you get to do, taking in beautiful European cities and worldwide. And Katowice are no different. Loving being here.
Yeah, I mean, Poland is great, the food is great, the people are great, the Polish esports community is always so hyped, and it's such an amazing feeling to be here at IM Katowice, especially when you enter the Spodek, which is the big arena where there's such a huge crowd, and it just completely blows you away.
And Ekop, you talk Polish yourself, so you can communicate with anyone without any problems, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I was born in Poland after all, yeah.
I can't. I'm just an ignorant Englishman, so I don't speak any other language, so I struggle a bit more, but it's okay.
All right, Lothar, how are you doing?
Well, I'm fine. And as I said in the rehearsals, Katowice is one of the most important things for me in Hearthstone because that was the first major I qualified for in 2014, and the second time I was here was as a part of a management of Nihilum. Then the third time, it's now the 2016 tournament, and I'm casting, and this is something really awesome to witness the evolution of the scene first-handedly. So it's just amazing to be here again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Sodl, can you take us through the tournament? What's the tournament's structure overall? We have 8 players here, right?
We have 8 players here, as with many tournaments in the 2016 season. It's all done through open qualifiers. There's been, I believe, 4 qualifiers to get people here, each qualifying 2 players, and we're being played in Conquest format, which Lothar can take you through now, I believe.
Sure. We're playing in Conquest, as you said,
Yes.
and this is quite a different type of format from the last year, something that you are probably used to. Because in Conquest, you win a match when you win with all of your decks. Players are bringing 4 decks, 1 is being banned, and then you have to win 1 game with each of the 3 remaining decks. When you do that, you win the game in the whole match.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of strategy involved because of the ban, I think. Like normal Conquest, you just bring the strongest lineup possible because you want to win with every deck and the deck being flexible. But when there is a ban involved, you can actually try to counter a specific deck with your lineup. Ekop, how does it work exactly?
Yeah, so the strategy is basically you expect a certain deck to become popular. For example, let's say Druid is the most popular deck, and you try to counter Druid with your lineup. Like you've built 4 decks that are geared specifically towards Druid that have the highest win rate against the deck, and this way you can, if an expected meta game, you can play around that. And people have done that to a huge success in other tournaments as well.
Absolutely. All right, and Sotl, there is a nice bracket for today. There's a lot of matches. We will have 7 matches broadcast at least. So who do we have, and what are the names that you actually recognize here?
Yeah, there's a good mix of up-and-coming players and a few names that you will probably have heard of. aka Wonder is definitely a standout on this list. He's had a huge year in 2015, really pushed himself to the forefront, hooked up with SK Gaming. That's really pushed his career to the next level, started getting some very strong tournament performances. Impact is another name. A little bit from further back, he had some success end of 2014, start of 2015. Dropped off a little bit, but still a very, very strong player who can make a big impact on this. And
Aha! Nice pun.
yeah, I know.
I like
good,
it,
right?
I like it.
And SilverName is the last name that stands out.
You're on a roll today.
That's good. All right. I have to learn from the best, Nimsh. I can't be on this desk with you and not step up my pun game. So
I do accept this.
yeah, you'll be familiar with SilverName if you are an avid Twitch watcher, especially if you're part of the Russian community. He's a big streamer, also a massive ladder monster, #1 legend on various occasions. Also a huge warrior player, both with Control Warrior and Patron Warrior.
Absolutely. Lothar, is there any other player you actually recognize in the list?
Well, this is something I like about open qualifiers, because we'll see some new players, some new faces, and as for now, I would like to see what each of those players will have to say after the game, because this is when we'll get to know them better. That's when the viewers can see them, first time on a screen.
First performance, yeah.
First performance, first interview. Maybe get some new favorites from those players that we'll have today, and basically that's it. Because for now, I would say apart from the players that you just described, Sobel,
Right.
so Impact, aka Wonder, and basically SilverName,
Yeah.
other players are practically unknown. It's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of perception for them is a really huge chance.
Definitely. And Ecop, being pro player yourself, what does it mean for those guys to actually play here in Katowice at IEM and maybe giving their shot at becoming getting the title, becoming the champion?
I mean, this is a huge opportunity for everyone, and every player that has not made his name for himself yet is looking for an opportunity like those players have today. If we look back last year at IEM Katowice, Orange, who was a widely unknown player before this event, made his name for himself. He won IEM Katowice 2015, and afterwards, like, the rest is history. Now Orange is one of the most well-known players in the world.
Definitely, definitely. And then the first match that we have for today is SilverName versus Zhivo. Do we know anything about Zhivo?
Not too much. Information's a little bit limited. He was came third place in one of the qualifiers, we believe, and came here as a last-minute replacement for Toaden, who couldn't end up making it. So information is a little bit sparse, but even to get third place in one of those open qualifiers, which of course was stacked with huge names as you'd expect, shows that he's a very, very strong Hearthstone player, so I'm sure we can expect good things from him.
Oh, definitely. I was talking to him for a moment before the match started, and apparently he is playing a lot of Hearthstone. He is competitive, playing some tournaments, getting highlighter finishes, and he also practiced fencing for 6 years. So
damn.
even though like you might think fencing doesn't have to do much with Hearthstone, the competitive mindset of practicing a sport, well, it can translate easily to Hearthstone as well. If you want to practice, you want to be the best.
So he builds fences, right?
But still, even fencing, like you said, not the most obvious parallels, but still, it's a discipline that takes a hell of a lot of mental concentration and focus, which is a thing that you have to definitely put into your Hearthstone game. You need to be able to be on and constantly paying attention for large periods of time. So if he's been able to build up that level of mental discipline, that's something that he can carry over at least.
Definitely. Ecop, do you think Fencing Coach is his favorite card at the moment?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, he's a competitive player, and he naturally would like gravitate towards competitive cards.
Maybe he will be inspired to using some new cards.
That's some next
It's
level
not-
stuff.
it's not
Next level
standard yet?
stuff, Lothar.
Not standard yet? Okay.
All right, so basically, the guys will fight. This is single elimination, so whoever wins advances in top 4, and we'll have 7 matches in total today. So a lot of Hearthstone action. Casters will rotate, and the players will rotate as well. And we're going to see a lot of, well, interesting decks, hopefully. We are seeing the first picks for the first round. So both players decided to go with Druid, but more importantly, there are bans. So what are the ban classes, Lothar?
Oh yeah, let's look at that. So Zhivo banned Rogue.
No, he banned Warrior, I believe, and SilverName
No,
banned...
Zhivo.
Zhivo went Rogue.
Yeah, Zhivo banned Rogue and SilverName banned Warrior. You're correct.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting, because if you ban a Rogue,
Yes.
then you certainly say something about the lineup, especially if you are running a Warrior, right?
Yeah, it's a very good point, but also people who bring Rogue to tournaments, it tends to be a rarer pick for people to bring Rogue. It's not one of the most common classes, but generally people who bring Rogue do well in the tournaments that they bring Rogue to. They bring Rogue because they're confident in Rogue, because they're strong Rogue players. You can go all the way back to BlizzCon, for example, and I think there were 4 or 5 rogues brought to the tournament, and the top 4 had 3 of them. So you can see this kind of pattern that the people who bring rogue are confident with it. So it's honestly not like a terrible respect ban situation where you say, okay, this guy's brought rogue, he's obviously comfortable with it. I know that deck piloted at a high level is extremely destructive. I'm just going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or just even might to think that the rogue. I mean, you might think that you're not as strong against that class. Like, you don't feel as confident against that class as you would feel against the other classes. So that might also be another reason to ban a specific class. If you don't feel confident against it, why play against it?
Oh, definitely. And I think it also tells us a lot about our lineups, because Zhivo banning Rogue means that his Warrior is possibly Patron, because then with the Warlock probably being Zoo, a Patron, those decks will be well, weak to Rogue mostly, and he also brings a Rogue himself, so then going into the mirror matchup is not the best for him. And then SilverName banning Warrior and bringing Mage, I would venture that his Mage is actually a Freeze Mage.
It would seem likely, yeah. I mean, so it's a huge red flag that goes off immediately, right? If you have a mage in your lineup and you ban Warrior, that is the first thing that everyone leaps to. That you're probably bringing Freeze Mage, widely regarded as the worst matchup in Hearthstone, more or less. So no great surprise if it is a Freeze Mage from SilverName for sure.
Is there a chance, or Lothar, is there a chance that the Mage can be actually Tempo Mage, because he did leave Druid alive, and
but then you probably won't queue Druid as a first option, right? I would just start with the Mage in this situation.
Usually.
Oh, SilverName would have started Mage in this situation? Yeah, probably. I would expect so, yeah.
Ecop yourself, you play Tempo Mage a lot.
Yeah, Tempo Mage it's a good deck to bring in this specific meta. There are like no real bad matchups, depending on how you build the deck, right? But yeah, it can have some weaker matchups depending on how we build the deck as well. Tempo Mage in general is a strong deck to bring, but for Conquest, Freeze Mage seems like a little bit of a safer choice because there's so many decks that Freeze Mage just completely dominates.
Especially Conquest with a ban, right? Because if there's one of those decks that Freeze Mage just can't win because it's such a polarized deck, you can just say, all right, I'm just going to get rid of that, and now my Freeze Mage looks pretty good against this lineup. So.
For the newer viewers in Hearthstone, when someone says completely dominates a deck, that means he has a 70% win rate.
At most. Yeah.
So it's just to be clear that you don't expect to win 9 out of 10.
Right.
You just expect this deck to win 7 out of 10.
With the exception of the Control Warrior Freeze Mage match, where completely dominant is actually accurate. Like, that actually happens.
And you win like 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah. If we take it even a step further, like when you say something is a good matchup, it's probably 55% to 45.
Yeah.
So that's our good matchups. Like coin flipping would be an okay matchup, I guess.
Well, in general, it's not when you think about card games in general. There are not a lot of 50-50 matchups at all, situations at all, because most of the time you have a little bit of skew for one of the players. Like one of the players always has a slight advantage unless it's a perfect mirror match.
Right.
That's the 50-50.
Yeah, like you say, it's just the nature of card games. You know, you can go all the way out to say poker, and if you have a 55% edge over an entire year, you're going to have a pretty nice poker career at the end of it.
I would say so.
Yeah, so 55 is actually a pretty huge margin in card games where the format is long and you prove your consistency over a long series of months and years, not just one set, one tournament even. It's the long game that these players are playing.
It's also always nice to see that there are many matchups that are, like you said, 55-45% win rate. Because that just represents a very healthy meta game, that the game is very well balanced, and that the guys at Blizzard are doing a great job.
Yeah, definitely.
Good job, guys.
Definitely good meta game.
Standing here.
Well, we have Blizzard guys watching us at the very moment. We're not at gunpoint though. Everything is okay. But honestly, guys, I really like the matchups in Hearthstone, and even the most polarized ones. As we mentioned, there's 70% or 80%. There is nothing like 100% win rate for one specific deck, which means that as a caster, you can never say like, yeah, he just lost because he queued his druid into Zoo or whatever.
Right.
So that's actually pretty cool. And this tournament specifically is also a bit different because the players will be playing in the booths. So guys, did you have experience playing in the booths before? Like soundproof booths?
I have, the first Gfinity Spring Masters
correct.
that I played in. That was one of the few tournaments apart from this that I believe was using the booths, and it's very, very strange. I don't know what the booths are like here, but Gfinity have white noise pumped in so that you're blocked from all the outside casting noise and crowd noise, etc. So it's a very shattering experience from playing at home in your bedroom or your office or wherever you play, and suddenly you're out of your comfort zone. It's temperature controlled. It's kind of too cold in there. They're blasting noise at you the whole time. So your level of concentration has to be so much higher to kind of overcome all these distractions.
The way it is set up here at Katowice is the players are on a stage in an auditorium, which is basically like a big cinema room.
Yes.
And there's one booth on the left, one booth on the right, and the players are facing the crowd. So the crowd is usually at Katowice. Yesterday it was like jam-packed in the auditorium, and hopefully it will be the same here today. And we'll have to see how the players adapt to that situation, being in that booth and being in front of a huge crowd, just looking them straight in the faces. And it's going to be tough for some players, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely.
Especially that's the first time.
Yeah, first time for them. Like I think Impact played tournaments before because he was at DreamHack Bucharest. And then obviously SilverName played some tournaments. He played in the HCT qualifier, right?
Yes, he did, yeah.
Yeah, so they have some experience, but it's still different. Like booth is definitely what you said, Sodal. It's a tough experience, and they will have to adjust. But if they overcome that predicament, and if they actually win their first match, they will get adjusted and accustomed. They will grow as players while playing this tournament.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a factor, right? It's not just down to who plays the best game on the board. It's who plays the best game outside of the game as well, who handles the nerves, who adapts to the situation, and even the things like preparation, deck building, lineup construction. All this
Jet lag.
Jet lag, yeah, sure. All this stuff is a much bigger factor in Hearthstone than people give it credit for. People watch and tend to evaluate the quality of players by just what's happening on the board. How are they sequencing their plays? How are their mechanics? But there's so many things that go on outside of that that you can get your edge with, like deck building, mind games, preparation, controlling your nerves, concentration, all these things just go into making a top-level Hearthstone player just as much. Team scouting, yeah.
Team scouting, yeah. Interesting. Guys, there is a nice trophy as well. Have you seen it? Like, we had a couple of shots, so players can actually see that trophy and see their end game.
Yes.
Solo, do you remember the prize pool?
I believe it's a $10,000 prize pool. I'm not exactly sure what the split is entirely, but as you said, that trophy being in the corner of your eye in the booth, again, this was the same thing at Gfinity. You could just see the trophy center stage.
But that was like glass.
Yeah, it was like glass in the way, just blocking your reach for it. So, you know, we can talk about the money, we can talk about the prize pool, but the things that professional players, people who want to make a career out of Hearthstone really care about is the trophy, the name recognition, and the Hearthstone Championship Tour points that then seed them forwards to the season final events that are coming up very soon in the following.
You can have a really fast grip on someone's mindset when you talk with him about a tournament that he's attending. And if he's talking about money, then he is not interested in the long run.
Yes.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
Ikap, do you agree with the guys?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you want to make it in the scene, if you want to become a professional, you definitely have to have winning in the long run in your forefront of the head. It's just winning a specific event is not going to get you anywhere in the long run. You have to perform consistently because even if you win one big tournament, if you don't perform after that, then people will just forget about you at some point.
Yeah, you can't be greedy.
Yeah, it can be too greedy. But on the other hand, guys, those players did already a great job qualifying for this tournament and being here in Katowice, playing their big live event, first live event for many of them. So definitely a lot of recognition should come to them anyway, not only to the finalists. Obviously, the finalists will be our champion, the winner of everything, but everybody who advances round at a time, I think they do deserve a lot of respect.
We should talk about the whole top 8, because this is like, when you go to other card games, you always see top 8 of an event, right?
Yes.
You see the deck list from the whole top 8, and all those players that are consistently being in the top 8 after the event, they're being praised as competitive players, as consistent players. And when you watch this tournament as a viewer, you should be aware that those guys had a long run already, and even if half of them will lose in the first round, and they will, they are not here because it was just one game.
Yeah,
it's a really long run for them, and they should have the recognition for being already here.
Yeah, the players that even go out in the first round now, I think their overall record, including the qualifiers, will end up being something like 7-2 at worst, possibly 8-1. So that's an extremely strong record for a Hearthstone player. You know, that will get you through any Swiss in the world, more or less. So.
Yeah, but then you lose points in Gosa Gamers.
Yeah.
Because on this one...
Yeah, I know that feeling. Don't you worry. Yeah.
Also, like this tournament, it's really important, I think, overall, because we've seen some announcements coming in the near future being done by Ben Brode and Young Woo, which you can tie into a possible new expansion or maybe format change or new heroes.
New hero
skins?
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is basically this might be one of the last tournaments we see in this format, in the original Hearthstone format, before we see any wild and standard
original format. What a time to be alive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, people have started to become a bit sour on the meta game and the format that we have at the moment. Everyone's very excited to see this new standard format come out, but at the same time, this is what we've had for a very long time, right? This is what we've grown with as a scene and become connected to. So these last few tournaments where we're kind of saying farewell to our existing format, you know, it's a nice moment. It's a nice thing to think about. This is the finale. We're wrapping up one era of Hearthstone and we're moving on to the next. So it is a pretty momentous occasion.
Definitely, and a lot of people say the metagame is not changing much, but we still see new decks. We see the aggressive Paladin, the Egg Paladin, we see Zhivo going through some shifts with Sea Giants and Leroy, and actually coming back to the Demon Zoo as well. So people can still innovate, they can still create new things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Rank 1 Legend, end of last season, brand new Hunter deck. Desert Camel, Injik Valdir.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, it happens. New decks are still coming out. They all seem to be from Jackie Chan at the moment. Egg Druid and Camel Hunter, but...
That actor is just amazing, man. He does all the things.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, guys, the game's ready, so have fun casting.
Thank you, Nim.
Thanks.
Okay, Druid Mirror. What is all about? Like, what's the fuss about this match?
What's the fuss? Yeah, good question, Lothar. It's very, very ramp in opening hand dependent is the issue that a lot of people have. Some Druid purists I've seen, for example, That's Admirable tweeting recently that he has something like a 67% edge in Druid Mirror over 100 game sample size or something.
Sounds,
which is, you know,
improbable.
vaguely statistically significant, but most people would agree it very much comes down to who has the better combination of ramp in their opening hand a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. To that tweet that you mentioned from Admirable, someone replied, yeah, you seem to draw the card Wild Growth a lot. But yeah, it does come down to that, basically, because you want to stay ahead in terms of ward, so you can be the one pressuring the enemy, so you can get him into range of the combo Force of Nature Savage Roar first. So having that huge board, that board advantage early on, thanks to Innervate and thanks to Wild Growth, being in ahead, it's so important.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, getting the bigger minions down first with Innervate and Wild Growth allows you to be the guy hitting face, and then you say to your opponent every turn, okay, you have to try and clear my stuff now. And if you're the guy hitting face and putting on pressure, exactly like you said, Ecop, Force of Nature Savage Roar just comes down afterwards and ends the game. And looking at the game, Zhivo is the man that hits the Innervate, gets his Shade down on turn 1, which very, very quickly becomes immortal against Druid. He can leave that there and pick whatever moment he likes Lothar to attack with it.
Yeah, the biggest, I think the biggest stuff about turn 1 Shadow of Naxxramas is the fact that it can trade into a Druid to go.
Yes.
As soon as it's played. And then you have a really huge edge, because your opponent is like, okay, I can play this 5-drop now. It's kind of sad when you think about it. If you don't have an answer to the Shadow of Naxxramas after you bait the attack out, then you still have a huge problem on board, which is the growing Shade. Right, so you need a Keeper or you need a Wrath.
And even if you do have an answer, in terms of the tempo exchange there, you've essentially lost your 5-drop to a 1-drop. Because that's how much mana he actually spent to play it. So.
But he sacrificed 2 cards, right? So it's not that bad when it comes to card advantage.
Right.
But when it comes to tempo, yeah, it's a huge swing.
Yep. So SilverName kind of lacking in aggressive options right now. He does have that Shade to get down, but he's going to put himself behind the game, and using his coin does mess up his curve a little bit in the long term. So he's just going to have to pass the turn here and just allow this Shade to keep growing. But Zhivo at the same time not really drawing into the minions that he wants to hit here.
Wow.
And
That's unlucky.
Nothing in this game for 2 pair, I'm afraid. Double Wrath, double Swipe, not going to get him too far. So there is going to be a fair amount of hero power pass in the early turns here.
Yeah, but don't you think it might be a good option to attack with the Shade next turn? But then you kinda let the Shade die to Wrath coin hero power, right?
Yeah, there's so many things. Wrath coin hero power, like you said. There's also the option of coining out the Swipe, coining out the Keeper of the Grove. Everything punishes this attack with the Shade so much. So if you innervate the Shade out, you need to attack into a minion to get some advantage out of it at least.
And also, you've just seen your opponent pass the first few turns as well, so you can get the kind of read on his hand that maybe it's kind of similar to yours, just stacked with removal, nothing really to do. So.
And
whoa!
Wow. I said it's standard, right? Yeah.
Standard out, PogChamp. Wow, that is a chill wind Yeti.
Yeah, it's definitely not chilling though, because it's like it's aggressive. It's an aggressive drop. You can actually play it this turn.
It's
a 4/5 with dice to the Shadow of Naxxramas next turn.
Right, but leaving the Shade on 1 health at the end of this turn wouldn't be too terrible. You have the Wrath to cycle if you want, or you can just use hero power. So. I wouldn't be against getting it out this turn, but we did see a little bit of Yeti come back into the deck when Aspirant first came out, right? Because everyone looked at it and said, okay, wow, I can hit 4 mana so consistently now that it was like Shredder plus Yeti or Shredder plus Savage Combatant.
Yeah,
but
Savage Combatant seems to be better.
It does, yeah. So interested as to how we've ended up with a Yeti in this deck, but there you go.
I mean, Yeti is just so resilient on its own with the 5 health, and it beats down your opponent with its 4 attack. It just has very solid stats compared to other minions that can be dealt with easier.
You know what? I was joking, like most of the time I was joking about coining out the Yeti because I would rather see the Emperor being coined out, but he actually went for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess he's maybe having seen his opponent pass a few turns, he's expecting a Shredder drop here, just thinking, okay, he's missed a few drops, so he's kind of entitled to have a Shredder at this point.
Okay.
So if his turn is Shredder and attack, then he just has the perfect swipe set up with 4 mana next turn.
Good point.
So you know, it's reasonable, and I think also he accepts that he can't wait too long to at least get some presence on the board here.
He had the Shadow of Naxxramas.
Yes, he did, yeah.
So, and now basically by playing the Yeti, especially with using the coin, you let your Shade grow old in the hand, right? Because it's not playable till like most likely after the Emperor will drop to the board. Because turn 4, after you play a minion with that kind of hand, you probably will have to be proactive, right? With what your opponent will play on the board, and you will use the swipe, you will use the Wrath or whatever just to deal with the minions.
It's true. It will be the card until the later stages, after you have not until you have nothing better to play, and then Shade can still be good because of the stealth factor. You have additional minions guaranteed, and then once you have the Force of Nature Savage Roar, you have additional damage thanks to those stealth minions. It doesn't really matter how big they are in that case.
Really interesting play from Zhivo there on his turn, choosing just to kind of preemptively swipe the Yeti, which puts it down to 1 health. He does have the second swipe and 2 Wraths in his hand, so doesn't seem like too bad of an idea just to get that down to 1 health preemptively, keep his Shade growing, and he's almost guaranteed to have an option for the next turn. Either his opponent plays a good swipe target, or he's just able to start cycling the Wraths.
Yep, that's a good point too. 2 big game hunters already when most likely both players are playing only 1 in their deck. Also interesting to have that option in your hand when you are like kind of safe against a Dr. Boom, but interestingly enough, most of the Druid players only have 1 target for the Big Game Hunter unless it's a huge Shade of an Extremis, right?
Yeah.
So you can go for the tempo Big Game Hunters in some really bad scenarios.
It's interesting because a long time ago in Hearthstone, it was kind of universally agreed among strong deck builders that having just 1 big game hunter target in your deck was a really bad idea, because your 1 big game hunter target just got big game hunted, and then you just lost the tempo advantage so much. But as time's gone on, people have just come around to the fact that Dr. Boom's so good, half the time it like doesn't matter if it gets big game hunted. You still gain the advantage from
Speaking
the
of
boom
Dr.
anyway.
Boom,
Ah,
look what
hello.
Sean.
Okay, interesting.
Well, that Big Game Hunter now looks way better. But the problem is, as you said, Dr. Boom has so much value, even when it's Big Game Hunted, it's still relevant.
Yeah.
So
It's entirely possible to still pick up a 3-for-1 with Dr. Boom after you get big game hunted,
which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like how Zhivo is so patient with his Shade of Naxxramas. Usually the more it grows, players would tend to want to attack with it more and more, right? Like the more damage it could deal potentially to the face, the more likely you are to actually unstealth it. But Zhivo very patient here. He's waiting for the perfect opportunity with the Shade.
I mean, I usually would like to attack already with the Shade in that situation, but he doesn't have minions to back up the attack, and that's the problem. If you would have a drop last turn, or 2 turns before that, he would immediately attack, I think, after he's hitting 5 HP.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not now when it's a big game hunter target, but previously. But previously, I definitely agree. When you have another minion consolidated alongside it, it's usually a good idea to attack with it. Because if it gets dealt with, you know, say you've played the Druid of the Claw alongside it, you allow them to deal with your Shade with like Wrath or Swipe or whatever. It's like, okay, big deal. I still have a Druid of the Claw now, and I'm 5 damage further progressed along the game. So you've messed up your tempo by having to deal with my Shade on your turn. So there's definitely a fine art to Shade management. It's one of the more complex things about Druid, shall we say?
But that's actually true. It's very interesting to queue up the attack the moment your opponent would have to spend an uneven mana.
Yes.
So he's like, if he doesn't have Living Roots, you can't really make the best out of your turn. And that's really bad for Druid players in general, right? Because you can't use Innervate that turn also, most likely. Because it still leaves you with a 1 mana floating, which is basically, you use the Innervate as a coin.
Look at that. Zhivo is still so patient. He had the opportunity to trade into a minion to kind of also protect his Druid of the Claw from being killed by minions that are on the board already. But yeah, Zhivo just patient, because even if the Druid of the Claw gets value traded with by the low tap, for example, there's still Wrath, there's still Swipe, there's still Keeper of the Grove, depending on what he needs.
Yeah, and also since it's grown to a 7/7, now he knows that it is particularly vulnerable. He knows how huge a big game hunter swing would be at this point in the game. But like you said, it looks like once that 5/5 goes into the 4/6, if that is what's supposed to happen, then he has a lot of answers to deal with that afterwards.
My god, turn 1 8/8 minion.
Yep, pretty good.
Too bad it didn't attack. Once.
Yeah, I was gonna say reminds you a little of the old school Undertaker, but that Undertaker would have already done about 25 damage by now as well. So.
It will be end of the game already, and it's like, I take you down.
So he goes ahead and cycles the Wrath here. Is going to use the Lower Theb to attack, and then looks like the Emperor Thorasan is being innovated out here. So
which is also when you have this Swipe and this Savage Roar on this board.
very nice. But Zhivo's kind of got his wish here. I think this is what he was trying to set up the turn before. Have that lower third end up as a swipe residual damage target. So he does have a nice looking swipe on this board.
That's a good point. I think you do actually do it. You just swipe it, finish it off with Raven Hero Power.
Yep.
And I would say you probably should attack, but then you're kind of left on against the big game hunter, you know, in a really bad spot. But what do you plan to do with that Shadow of Examas otherwise? Do you keep it to finish the game?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're getting to the point where Force of Nature draw is just lethal with that Shade in Stealth, so it might be worth hanging on to it.
Yeah, with after the swipe, the SilverName's Druid will be at 26 health, so all the Shade needs to be is 12-12, and then it's like lethal with the combo and the Shade alone.
12-12. Sounds ridiculous.
No, it's less than that, right? If it like right now, if it was an 8A, it would be
10,
14 plus 8 plus 4.
10,
Yeah, so
right.
it's only 10-10. Yeah.
So just
I
two more
rate
turns.
that 10 out of 10. Good yoke.
So yeah, Zhivo, all he needs is 2 more turns to draw that Force of Nature, and then it's game over from there.
Pretty much. And SilverName running out of options here. He's drawn his Innovates way too late in the game. This is what we talked about at the start of the matchup. Zhivo was able to get that advantage by the turn 1 Shade, drawing his Innovate at the right time. Whereas SilverName's drawn them, so I think he's drawn 1 on turn 5 and 1 on turn 7, which was kind of less than ideal when he was so far behind on the board. So he's going to be looking at that Dr. Boom in his hand and thinking, okay, maybe this is my last chance to take this board back. But with the big game hunter in Zhivo's hand, looks like he's running out of options very quickly.
But like we mentioned before, the Boombots are still on the board, and they are going to be a threat with the Savage Roar as well.
That's true.
Look at Zhivo's health. He's at 17 already, so just a couple of minions combined with the Savage Roar could threaten potential lethal.
That's very true.
Well, you still have to play it. It's like the best thing you can do, and innervate the Shade, most likely.
Yeah, innovating the Shade out with the Savage Roar in hand feels like his win condition at this point. He's going to need to get some of these minions banking on the Savage Roar damage. Hope that Force of Nature comes out of his deck soon. Even with only 8 mana next turn, because of the discounted Savage Roar, he'll be able to activate the combo. So,
well,
that's pretty close.
But it's 1 damage off lethal.
It is.
Where's the innovate when you need it? Oh wait, it's in the Shade. Well, now you need to count damage. Do you need to be like super safe, kill every single thing apart from the Shadow of Naxxramas, or you can push for the damage? And I would say just play Big Game Hunter and Keeper of the Grove to kill one of the bombs. You can actually use the Keeper of the Grove first. No, sorry, Hero Power first. No, you don't want to take damage to your hero. So probably Keeper, the bomb, kill the bomb, take the damage. Hero Power, other bomb, take the damage. Most likely the Shade twice. Even if it takes 8. Well, okay, 8 is catastrophic. But if it takes even 7 damage, it's still fine. You don't want your Big Game Hunter to die, and then you have lethal with the why?
Here's the thing that if Zhivo expects the combo here, it's lethal no matter what with the Shade. Doesn't matter how the Boombots hit, because Zhivo will be in lethal range with the combo, because he knows that one of those combo pieces, if he has it, got discounted by Thorison. So there's definitely going to be combo if there's combo.
Is anyone else at all surprised by that Shade attacking that?
Yeah, I was surprised. I said actually,
there is no need for it.
Yeah,
the Shade grows +1/+1 next turn, and you have lethal with it in stealth. So now you've left your opponent at 17. You have combo in hand, so you're not in range of lethal. If your opponent finds a board clear here, suddenly you're really far behind.
Yes, as I said, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
from our perspective, true. We know that it would have been lethal if he just kept the Shade in hiding, but you never know if SilverName would have drawn a taunt, and maybe Zhivo was expecting that.
But it doesn't really matter if you draw the taunt, because that's your only win condition right now. Now you're left.
I feel like, if you're putting your opponent on playing a taunt, then you use that Shade to kill the taunt the next turn, right?
Or just use 2 treants.
Yeah, I don't see the benefit of bringing it out this turn. But Zhivo obviously had something in mind, but unfortunately for him, and obviously we know this, so we have the ability to just look like geniuses and call the misplay, but Zhivo can't see his opponent's hand, but unfortunately for him, his opponent's hand is pretty much perfect at dealing with this board state.
Yeah, I was thinking about using Swipe instead of the Hero Power, just to preserve some life points.
Yeah, it would have been reasonable, but I think he wants to swipe face, maybe in combination with Savage Roar, just to be able to finish out the game that way. But yeah, keeping himself at 16 means that he can't be hero powered down too easily into combo range, so this game that looked more or less locked up for Zhivo is kind of slipping away from him right now.
You can use the word thrown away.
So
Like in League of Legends.
So if Zhivo, like consider this now, the play for Zhivo, the obvious play that we think about is low tap and hero power down the shade, but that still opens up lethal for SilverName with Savage Roar alone, because Savage Roar is 6 damage along with hero power and oh, actually hero power is not possible, or is it?
Yeah,
Wait,
the Savage Roar will cost 7
yeah,
mana.
it's okay, yeah. Usually it wouldn't be if it wasn't discounted.
Right.
But yeah. So this will be exact lethal for SilverName here, if he spots it.
He should, probably.
He should. It's pretty simple. Savage Roar adds 6 damage on a 2-minion board. Things that do the same amount of damage as Fireball I find really easy to remember. I don't know. Like Tinker's Oil is just a Fireball for 4 mana if you have a minion. So
I just wanted to say, he drew a Living Roots, but never mind.
Oh, but yeah, never mind, he's under low threat, but he already has the damage to get it covered. Savage Roar comes through. Game 1 is going to come down to SilverName in a game that we talked about the Druid Mirror being decided by opening hand ramp.
And it would have been decided.
Yeah, but the point I want to make is, sure, all things being equal, the Druid Mirror can come down to opening hand ramp, but you know, if one player makes a mistake and one player plays solidly, or one player plays solidly and the other player plays exceptionally, that's where the skill discrepancy in Hearthstone can come in, right? And you can actually gain an advantage by being good at the game. It sounds strange, but it happens. It happens, guys.
Listen, Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens now. And now Zhivo will be in a position that he lost the game, and he probably knows that he could have won it easily, right? So the nerves might be kinda, you know, piling in on him, and might be affecting his gameplay in game 2 and 3. Hopefully not.
Look at that awesome Iron Beast
Yeah, no,
owl.
sorry. Sorry to blank you there, Lothar. I just got distracted by SilverName's mascot.
You got silenced.
Boom. Nailed it. Nailed it. So good. All right. So we are going to get ready to go into game 2 here, but as you said, Zhivo's mental state is going to be in question now. He might not have even reevaluated his play on that turn. He might have not even considered the other route of keeping the Shade stealthed.
But he was keeping it for so long.
I know.
It's like, this is the most patient Shade of Naxxramas I have ever seen from since like the domination of Handlock. Because that was like the win condition for the Druids. When he played a Giant, yeah, I have a Shade bigger than your dude, so I'll just trade it off and then go from that. Right.
Yeah, he was so patient, and it also surprised me as well that he put it out of hiding. It's just inconsistent with his line of play that he's had throughout this whole entire game. Maybe he lost his nerve at some point. Just really, the Shade got big enough and bigger, and the bigger it got, the more he was anxious to just attack with it.
Right.
So that's probably what happened there.
Because not only did he pass up, you know, face damage with it on a few turns, he also passed up favorable trades with it on a few turns as well. So it seemed like he was really committed to that all-in stealth play. And then I guess, yeah, just a little bit of a game of chicken, and he flinched before his opponent revealed the Shade, got punished for it. So.
All right, we see the class being picked up by both players. Of course, SilverName, because he won with his Druid, has to pick another class due to the Conquest rules. He chooses to go for his Warrior, whereas Zhivo chooses to go for the Druid once again.
And now it's the question, which warrior is it? If it's a patron warrior and it goes off with the patrons on 10-5 with some really cool inner rage whirlwind effects, then it might be really, really hard for the Druid player to come back from that point.
For sure. And also the new patron, the more mid-rangey patron, previously Warsong patron, for example, did kind of rely on that early patrons as quick as possible against Druid.
Yeah.
But the new mid-rangey patron does have the ability to just kind of go, you know, Armor Smith, Frothing Berserker, Piloted Shredder, and just like tempo Druid out of the game if they get a slow draw.
Yeah, and also have those late game threats like Dr. Boom and Grommash if everything else fails.
Exactly. I seem to remember we played a pretty interesting patron versus Druid game at one point,
that is
didn't
true.
we? Yeah.
Please don't remind me, because I lost that match.
That's exactly why I am reminding you, Econ.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
All right, then. The players are jumping into the game, and we see the opening hands here.
Still nothing that indicates a certain warrior yet.
No, not so much. Shield block is a little bit rarer in Patron, but definitely doesn't rule it out at this point.
Well, it was a staple.
It used to be in the Warsong deck that was more cycle focused, then the shield block was more common for sure.
We see Zhivo mulligan instantly everything away, looking for that wild growth and innervate.
He hit the wild growth, but doesn't have the immediate curve play. He can the Azadrake not ideal. You generally want a Shredder or a Shade of Naxxramas, but Azadrake will do the job.
I just saw Battle Rage.
Okay.
I think I know what's the deck.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a giveaway.
Yep.
So
for the viewers, it's probably some version of a patron warrior.
Correct. We've seen a little bit of experimentation with Patron Warrior recently, people messing around with teching in one Raging Worgen. We even saw Crane going completely ham in the G2 Class Legends tournament that we did, Lothar, with the double Patron Rampage Faceless Manipulator. Like,
I think it was too
combo
hybrid. It was too hybrid. You should probably just think about one win condition in that deck, because it's so combo orientated.
Agreed.
Right, that it dilute your draws in general because of that. But it was a different format, so you know.
But yeah, primarily the Patron deck is still in the kind of mid-range form where you have the guts of the old school Warsong Patron deck, but you're adding in more mid-range and late-game threats, like you said, Ecop, Dr. Boom, Gromash, and then sort of Piloted Shredders, Dread Corsairs, sometimes Corcoran Elite in the middle as
And the most important card for SilverName is also the card that he kept in his opening hand. Is this the Last Bite? And this is just such an insane card against Druid. It deals with those mid-rangey minions so well because of its high attack, and also the Whirlwind effect that you obviously need to fill up the board early with patrons. It's just a free Whirlwind effect, which is basically super amazing.
And having now drawn the Patron as well, he's only an Inner Rage or a Whirlwind away from that very, very early 4 Patron board, which, as you mentioned, Lothar, is the primary win condition against Druid. It's what you want, even though this new high mid-range Patron deck does have other ways to beat Druid. That's still what you want. It's still what the dream you're having to have in your opening hand.
Yeah, and for Zhivo, it's again not looking really great, because the Azure Drake is the weakest minion that you can play against a warrior in general,
right?
Unless it's Keeper of the Grove, which is even weaker.
Yeah.
But like the Azure Drake dies to most of the things that warrior is packing, even a combination of Fear War Axe with whatever one source of damage that he can get, like let's say.
I mean, the Armor Smith, right, would do the job if he really needed to. Safari
exactly.
War Axe.
Oh, look at that, Tempered Big Game Hunter.
I would still go for the Azure Drake, because you're so thirsty on draw here that getting a minion in the next draw and in the next 2 draws, if you play Azure Drake, is crucial to have a board presence.
Right.
What this tells us about Zhivo's game plan, though, in my opinion, is that he wants to keep that coin and he wants to keep it innovate just for the combo. He wants to close out the game early. He wants to just get some damage in with the minions he can play in the early stage, and then just finish very quickly with Force of Nature, Savage Roar.
Also, in this matchup, if you're expecting to play against patrons, Azure Drake is a nice card to have in your hand.
With the swipe?
Especially if you have Innovate, because suddenly Azure Drake activates Living Roots to be a very effective patron clearer. It activates Swipe to be a reasonable patron clearer if you can deal with an extra 3/3. So it's a reasonable card to hold on to if you're expecting to have to play from behind a little bit, which maybe he is based on these opening hands. So we'll see if he holds on to it again here, and that'll tell us something about his thinking. But it looks like he's decided it's time to play it.
Yeah, there's just not really any good alternative in this situation. Like, what would you use? Keeper of the Grove or like 2 damage on an Armor Smith? No thanks.
No.
Just get the additional options with the card draw from the Azure Drake. It does seem like he's going for the Keeper of the Grove.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd have to say he's in that mentality where he thinks, okay, I'm not going to be the pressure druid this game. I'm not going to rush the warrior down out of the game. I'm probably going to have to react to some stuff in this game. So the Azure Drake is going to help me react a lot better.
Well, that's something I wasn't anticipating. Like, usually when you make that kind of style, that kind of play, with that kind of style in mind, then, as you said, you will be very retro active, right? And you will be waiting for your opponent to make a move first. And that's usually not how Druid works, because you need the board presence first to pressure and to have additional ways of clearing the board, because you have only Ravs and Swipes and maybe 1 Living Rules in the deck, right? In most situations.
Look at that, SilverName hand contains a Rampage. So we might see one of those hybrid decks again.
Looks like it is the hybrid, yeah.
It might be a Worgen.
I was suspicious because of the shield block that I mentioned to you at the start, Lothar, but yeah.
Well, it's cool to see a Rampage on a Patron as well.
That's very true, yeah.
Right? You can just pump your own your own Patron to some enormous levels, trade with a minion from the Druid, and still gain a Patron.
Yeah. Seems good.
So he can clear the patrons this turn if he wants to. Azure Drake, Living Roots, Savage Roar, with using almost all of his hand. He'd have to use Drake, Innovate, Coin.
What about a combo?
He can combo as well, sure, but this, like, the Drake way gets him a 5/5 onto the board and maintains the Force of Nature in hand as well. So Interesting to see which one he goes for here, but looks like he is going to innovate out the combo. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the best ways of actually dealing with a patron wave. It's not as big of a patron wave as it could have been, but still, like, using the combo for one patron wave is usually what you expect to do if the patron board gets out of control. It didn't quite get out of control in this situation, but it's still like a combo for a patron wave, and then like the other combo for another patron wave or some other spells.
Sure. I think I would have just about preferred the other line though. So you would have had a Drake on board, you Savage Roar down the 3-2, and you Living Roots the 3-3. You end up with a 4-4 against a 1-3 Armorsmith. I guess this has the advantage of playing around Battle Rage completely, though, which is nice.
The problem is that Force of Nature without Savage Roar, it's not really that useful against Patron.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so from your perspective, Ecop, what do you do as the warrior player now? What's your plan? Because you lost the patrons, right? That's one of your win conditions in this situation. Your second win condition will be patron.
OTK,
Yeah,
apparently.
but if he has the rampage, exactly. Do you favor cycling? Or do you favor building up the weapon presence on board first?
Well, you definitely don't need the weapon now, especially there's no reason to preemptively play the weapon because you don't know which minion your opponent's going to play next, which weapon you will actually need. But if you want to set up a whirlwind effect for the Battle Rage, for example, it's in hand already, you might even go face with the Despite right now.
Okay. Interesting.
Looks like he's going to hold those. Yeah, he's going to hold on to it. I agree with you, Ecop. I agree with your analysis completely. I think you just don't know which minion you want to react to on the next turn, so you don't know whether War Axe or Deathbite is going to be appropriate. So I think I would have cycled with Shield Block there personally, but
Maybe
SilverName valuing
Rage,
that
right?
tempo. So
Maybe even the Battle Rage would have been okay-ish, right? Because
Sure.
you're packing so many cycles in the deck that even if you hit like another one card draw, should be enough to have a quick board against the Druid, and that's what you need, right? You need either the executes or just a single minion that is pressuring the Druid each single turn, and you clear up the minions with weapons.
Yeah, makes sense. I think with the Battle Rage, with the Deathbite in hand, you can afford to be a little bit greedier with the Battle Rage.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, interesting. Like SilverName just valued the tempo here, preloading the weapon. I mean, this is a very tempo-focused matchup. That's what you can't let Druid get carried away with. So it's definitely not wrong. It's just an interesting line. But obviously, he knows his deck better than we do. We don't know the exact makeup of this deck just yet. So he knows what his win condition is. He knows what his plan is.
And the Flame Jugger without the Battle Cry. Imagine if Palta Shredder would have dropped the minions with a Battle Cry.
Oh man, that would be...
What would be the most disastrous one?
Millhouse Master.
From the best drop from the Palta Shredder to the worst one instantly.
Yeah. You just can't play Shredders against Freeze Mage anymore. You just lose the game.
Oh, it'd be actually cool to see. Maybe people would stop using Palta Shredder.
Well, again, not long. We are in the build-up of saying farewell to Standard, Lothar. So,
Farewell.
oh, sorry, saying hello to Standard soon, saying goodbye to this format.
Yeah,
so let's acknowledge the work that Shredder has done. Let's we're gonna say goodbye to him. Let's send him off with a bang.
I would really love to see some stats, like how many times Death Rattle from Palta Shredder was used since it was released, like on European server,
Right.
on a North American server.
Oh yeah, they had those infographics in the past, right?
Yeah.
I missed those.
That's like the flavor of the game that you really would like to see, the stats, the weird stuff that was happening in the game, like how many Harrison Jones were played against a weapon and without a weapon, and that kind of stuff.
Right, and that's something that Blizzard, they do have access to all that kind of data, and they really do like closely monitor it and like decide how you're going to make the balance adjustments. Obviously, we know they're very reticent to make balance adjustments, but when they do, it's based on a huge amount of data like that. So.
All those Excel sheets. Man.
Yeah.
And the second drop. Oh. Well, a decent drop. No effect, no other effect whatsoever, but a decent drop from the Palta Shredder still. 3-2 minion, pressures, the opponent. Oh, that looks good. The 2 Deathbite were used. So you know that your Azure Drake is like, yeah, you need to sacrifice 2 sources of damage to clear it, right? Or 1 source of damage and an execute.
Right.
To have an option, so it's okay.
This is nice because he was able to deal with that first patron wave. He's being able to climb back into this game now. He didn't have the greatest start, but he's starting to draw into his cycle now to be able to keep the pressure up. And SilverName is just kind of sat on a few combo pieces right now, not much to do with them. But that Gnomish Inventor is a good start to try and find some additional answers.
Yeah. That is the downside of this hybrid version. If you just lack the board presence that you would otherwise have with Piloted Shredder, with Dr. Boom, with Grommash, which you could assume are not in that deck, because you have to fit in the Rampage, you have to fit in the Charge, the Warden, and also like all the cycle cards, of course.
I was actually thinking about using additional source of damage to kill the Azure Drake without the need of using the low tap, because now a 5/1 low tap is easily killable by the hero power, by a swipe, by a Wrath with a cycle, and that is just catastrophic for SilverName right now.
By the way, Zhivo there should probably be alarm bells going off in his head already, like from a couple of turns ago, after he saw those those different cards that usually are not being played in a patron deck, right? The only question is how exactly is the build of SilverName. That's probably what's going through his head right now. What combo pieces might he have, and what could kill him in this situation? Because you would, against the Worgen OTK, you always have to be prepared for any kind of damage that might pop out of this hand.
But you can easily count it, right? Because without the Emperor already being played, you know that the Worgen is for 3 mana, that the Charge is for 3 mana, so that's already 6. Then you have a Rampage for 2, so that's 8 mana, and damage output is 5, 7, 9, right? So it's 18 damage.
You can easily count it, Lothar says, and then you just see his face crease up as he tries to actually put it together.
The Inner Rage buff as well, though.
Yeah, Inner Rage is obviously a potential, but yeah, as you said, he's seen the extra cycle cards come down, like the Gnomish and the Shield block, so you're right, a few alarm bells would have gone off, like, oh, okay, this looks like it's a Worgen deck.
Oh, there's a Charge.
Yep, Charge has been drawn. Oh. Wow. These last 4 or 5 draws from Zhivo have been so solid. I think we've seen like Drake into Shade, into Boom, into Ancient of Law, something like that.
I'll probably still play Dr. Boom.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we can draw cards later. Let's just get the big boy on the board right now.
So Wrath the Ghoul to get it out of the way, because you don't want to unshade your minion, unstealth your minion right now, and then just drop the Dr. Boom with which creates a huge board presence for the Druid and makes a huge problem for the Warrior to deal with, because we did see that he used 1 Execute already. We did saw 1 AoE effect and the Ghoul. And 2 Death Spot, right? So.
Right. You can even, if you really want to, you can kind of afford to attack here with the Shade, because it's pretty effective at setting up lethal.
But then it dies to the weapon, right?
It dies to the weapon, but if he has to hit it with the weapon, he's taken 8 from that thing, and you just more or less have lethal. I think if you attack with it, you play the Living Roots here as well, and just go for the all-in lethal gambit, but he's going to hold on. It's just, with 1 combo spent, he might have to earn this a bit more honestly with actual minion aggression. So it's something to consider. I definitely don't blame him for turning it down on that point.
There's no reason to go all-in, really. Like, he has the board presence, and he's at a reasonable amount of health, so he's not in any position to be threatened here by the Warrior.
And let's see those important bombs right now. Ooh. Well, that didn't work out.
Not what SilverName was hoping for, that's for sure.
Yep. So, in retrospect, was it correct to go for the double patrons on 10-5? Not to wait 1 more turn to have 4 patrons on the board.
It's interesting. I mean, the Druid of the Claw draw here is a formality. He would have had the lethal with Living Roots anyway, but yeah, like you said, it's normally 4 patrons is a win condition against Druid, but like I said, you can also kind of just tempo them out of the game a lot of the time, and one of the ways to do that is just to play 2 patrons alongside another minion that you have in play, and then you still have this nice 3 minion board against Druid that's hard to deal with. So I can understand SilverName's mentality in going for that, but unfortunately Druid did have the necessary answers. It was a pretty niche answer, right? Innovate combo to clear the board, so...
Yeah, you can play around that.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So it's hard to say he really got punished for a bad decision. It's just one of those things that worked out that way, but maybe 60% of the time, just making up numbers, that play that he decided to make would have worked out favorably, which makes it the right play overall.
Yeah, that's true. Like, there were a lot of things to consider. Oh, look at that crowd here in Katowice.
Yeah, Zhivo has some local support with his fellow Bulgarian fans right there.
You're serious or just joking?
No, he's from Bulgaria. There was a Bulgarian flag.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Nice. Yeah, rooting for your hometown favorite, why not?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's also some Russians in the crowd to cheer for SilverName.
Yeah, like I say, he's a very well-known personality and streamer in the Russian community. I think he's one of the biggest Russian language streamers on Twitch. So
I think so.
yeah,
too. Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's looking kinda even for now, and the score is even too. So.
Yeah, both players.
What do you know?
Both players managed to win with their Druid, so not really a surprise there. We obviously know that Druid is like one of the strongest decks in Hearthstone right now.
Yeah.
So no surprises there that Druid didn't win. And yeah, now what are the remaining decks for them? We know that
there's a Rogue for Zhivo.
Yeah, we obviously know that there's Warrior for SilverName, the OTK Warrior, and also he has that Mage.
The unknown mage that we
unknown
suspect is probably Freeze because of the ban strategy.
Yeah.
And then from Zhivo's side, he has the Rogue left, and he has his Warlock because his Warrior was banned. So that's what we've come down to, but...
We will definitely see one new deck here, because Zhivo, of course, has to pick either Warlock or the Rogue, where SilverName can choose to play his Warrior again, or he can switch to Mage.
Well, SilverName should probably know that if his Rogue was banned, that means the Warrior is probably Patron. Because the usual problem against Rogue with the Patron deck is the fact that you will just get Blade Flurried. And you lose the patrons, and there's a lot of board control from the Rogue. It's very similar to the Druid, right? You play a minion on the board, and then you use your resources from the hand to clear off your opponent minions. So backstabs, eviscerate, they act like grabs and swipes.
Sure.
Basically, it's almost the same. You have the preparation to act as an innervate, but it doesn't affect the board presence. It affects your opponent board presence.
Right.
And basically the game plan is the same, so I'm not surprised by the ban, but SilverName will be aware of that.
For sure. So it looks like going into game 3 here, we're going to have Rogue coming up against the hybrid Patron Warrior from SilverName, but match is tied at 1-1 here, and like I said, we've just seen two Druid games won, and there's a phenomenon in Conquest that players will talk about where, you know, there's no such thing as a bad win, but there are unimportant wins, and there are more important wins, and your Druid generally winning in a Conquest lineup is not something that you view as too much of an important win, unless your opponent is bringing the strategy that you talked about at the start, Ecop, where their entire lineup beats Druid. Then of course Druid is a huge win, but most of the time you feel like Druid is in such a strong position right now in the metagame that you expect it to pick up a win at some point. So the Druids being out at this point and both having picked up their victory is not too much of a big deal for the overall course of the tournament.
Yep, I agree. Very good point here. So we're going into the game 3 between SilverName's Warrior and Zhivo's Rogue. Double backstab opener and eviscerate, that sounds like a mulligan for me.
Yeah, generally the backstabs are not that important against a Warrior, especially because the Warrior doesn't have those early minions to pressure you with. You don't have to be worried about that, and Zhivo wisely just mulliganing those cards away. Eviscerate also not required early on. You'd rather have it in the mid to late game to deal with bigger minions or finish your opponent off.
Right.
So he mulligans everything away. SilverName, on the other hand, still debating what to keep. And it seems like he's going to keep the Loatheb, maybe, because Loatheb is, of course, such an important card to have against Rogue in general. It just cripples a complete turn, potentially.
Yeah, there's
most likely.
Yeah, there's a very, very possible that sometimes you play Loatheb and the turn is just pass from Rogue. It happens more often than you might expect. They do play a decent amount of minions in their deck, but one of the most spell-heavy decks for sure.
But now with the inclusion of Tomb Pillagers, it kind of shifts towards more minion-heavy Rogue decks than it was before, especially after the change of the Gazettan Auctioneer, which is feeling like a millennium ago.
It really is.
There was a small change of the playstyle of the Rogues. Already a Blade Flurry in the hand, which is super important. Super important to have already in the hand. To know that you might have an easy way of clearing the patrons. You just need one buff to the weapon, or you need 2 spell powers.
I'm curious as to, we might be overstating the importance of the patrons in this particular matchup, because there's the opportunity for SilverName to play the matchup in a a more old school combo style, or even a little bit of a control warrior style, where it's just
Smashing up with weapons. And
right, just
that's it.
remove all rogue stuff until they run out of threats, and then hoard cards with your cycle and just go for the Worgen OTK. It might be more of a viable strategy than pushing all in on patrons sometimes. Again, we saw Crane quite often just using his patrons as a distraction technique, like a time walk essentially. Like he's playing his patrons and he's saying, okay, now you have to spend your whole turn dealing with my patrons. That gets me a turn closer to being able to combo you down.
An early Armor Smith is quite an... It's not a problem for the rogue, it's just like a minor distraction, as you were saying about the patrons, that are a major distraction.
Yeah.
Armor Smith is like a... It's something that makes the rogue uncomfortable on the board, because you don't want to add the armor to the warrior, but at the same time it doesn't scream, remove me immediately, right? It's like the best way to deal with the Armor Smith is backstab agent.
Yeah, generally you don't really care about the Armor Smith, but sometimes the armor that the Armor Smith can provide, if ignored for too long, can add up in a significant way. Because the reason, generally, how the matchup goes for Warrior against Rogue is that Warrior has to do is deal with the minions from the Rogue side and gain armor in the process. And SilverName's deck does that way better than regular patron decks as well, because of the addition of shield block as well.
Yeah, that's very true, but the important thing to have to be able to do that is those weapons. You know, Fiery War Axe is so-so, but Death Spite against Rogue is so huge. You know, the first swing is able to deal with a small minion early on, and then the second swing is set up ready for the Violet Teacher. It's also good against Azure Drakes in the later turns. Lotheb with the second swing as well, it can be huge.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah, like every minion. Tomb Pillager as well. So Death Spite is such an important card to draw if you're going to go for that kind of long-term strategy. So it looks like he's starting to cycle through his deck now and put on a little bit of pressure as well as he's building his board.
Yeah, I like how he used the Inner Rage right now to draw a card, because he knows if there would be a backstab an agent last turn, that combo would have been used to kill the Armor Smith, so he most likely knows that there will be no agent, but there might be a backstab. So he plays around the backstab of the Inner Rage, right?
Yeah.
We of course see that the agent was drawn right now, but it makes no difference in the current with the current hand that Zhivo has. So
It's also okay to just basically use the Inner Rage as card draw just to cycle through, because you're more likely to win with the combo than with the patrons. Because the patrons, as we've said before, are getting dealt with so easily. All it takes is like one weapon buff and the Blade Flurry to clear the entire board.
The Inner Rage is still a useful part of the Worgen combo though, if you need it later on. So you are still sacrificing damage by using the Inner Rage, even if you do intend to like save it for the Raging Worgen combo. So
that's a good point.
It is still a consideration, but yeah, I agree with you, Ecop. Using it, you know, there's no point hoarding cards for a win condition if you don't cycle through your deck enough to draw that win condition. So.
At the same time, you're aware that most of the rogue players are only having like one taunt in their deck, so you're almost sure that if you use your weapons as just a damage source, then you can get a smaller combo and still win the long game, right? Because you don't need to pull off 28, 30 damage from the Worgen. You just need like 18,
right,
20 maybe max.
Also, the amount of healing in Rogue has scaled back as well. Like the age of antique healbot in Oil Rogue, for example, seems to have come to an end. People are moving back towards the Earthen Ring Farseers. So they've cut down on healing a little bit. So definitely a little bit more susceptible to burst damage combos.
True as well. Now the poison is being drawn, which enables the agent to be played with the combo, which is not bad, but it seems like a turn when you just want to slam a 5-drop on the board, right? Because that makes your turns way more efficient with a double 3-drop on turn 6, an example. And your Lotheb can be healed as well with the Farseer after he trades. If it doesn't die, of course. But if it dies, then it's also not a big problem. And you know that most likely your Lotheb will clog the warrior's hand for one turn.
Sure. I think Lotheb just gets dealt with far too cleanly here, I think, by the 2-2 and the War Axe to be able to play it out here. It just seems pretty low value. So I like the Sludge Belcher. It's just a little bit more resilient to the board. Makes the warrior SilverName have to do something a little bit extra here. So I like the Belcher over Lotheb, but I agree with your analysis. I think with the 2 5-drops in your hand, one of them had to come out onto the board that turn.
The problem is that I was thinking about saving the Belcher because it's so important against a combo deck.
Yeah.
I don't know how many taunts are in Zhivo's deck, but it seems like one of the most important cards in general in your deck to battle against a combo deck. Like you saw the rampage. You should know that there will be some charge minions that can just finish you off because you have no taunt. Right.
Yep, makes sense.
Ikop, what's your turn here?
So, yeah, it's pretty easy to just deal with this entire board if Zhivo wants to, but he can still choose to keep ignoring the Armor Smith, just get the higher attack minion away, just kill the Taskmaster with the hero power, and then follow it up with, say, you could go Earthen Ring into SI7, you could go Loatheb, you could also just Violet Teacher, and you could also use Violet Teacher and Deadly Poison, I suppose, and just kill the Armor Smith away. There's a lot of options, and it's tough sometimes to figure out the best one because you don't know how your opponent's going to respond to it. Just have to basically play the board.
Okay, I'm kind of surprised by this. Seems like Thalnos has a lot of value, especially when you pair it up with the Deadly Poison and the Blade Flurry, because then it kills Non-Mission Preventer that you saw last game. That is being played in this deck, so that the spell power holds additional value for the 4 HP minions, and your hand is not that bad that you need Thalnos to cycle.
Right. He's made a mana inefficient play here. The Earthen Ring Farseer healing would have already given him full value if he'd have used it that turn, so there was no concern there. So interesting choice to go with the Blood Mage. He's obviously missing something from his hand right now that he feels like he wants.
Yeah. Let's think. What can it be? What does he miss? Is that Dr. Boom for 7?
Or Sprint, maybe.
Yeah,
But
depending on what he's playing.
Would you like to sprint in a situation when you play against a combo deck and your opponent has the board control right now? Because you know that there's a few War Eggs that will clean up this board and your opponent will just play. I mean, oh, look at that.
There it is.
I mean, that was his first draw. That was the one he was going to get anyway. But he did double his chances as to get to Dr. Boom. If that was his plan, that he felt like he needed some pressure on the board really big next turn, then obviously playing the Blood Mage doubles his chances to hit that 7-drop. But yeah, the Blood Mage play, because it was so inefficient compared to the seemingly obvious option of Farseer plus SI, it definitely feels like there was something in his hand that he feels like he needed. You know, we can't really get into his head and think what it was, but at least he cycles through his deck a little bit, picks up 2 decent options with the Drake and Boom, and feels like this is a Big Daddy Boom turn.
Yeah,
wow.
Boom seems so perfect on this board. He needs to chip away at the armor as soon as possible, because the more armor the opponent, the warrior gains, the less likely it is that Zhivo will ever finish him off with the burst after the minions have been dealt with. So Dr. Boom has the most potential here. Of course, we've seen some patron decks run BGH at sometimes. Of course, there's always the threat of execute. You always have to think about that. But you can't wait for your opponent to just use execute on other minions, because those other minions are dealt with so easily, as we said, with those weapons. So just playing the Dr. Boom as soon as possible and hoping your opponent doesn't have the execute or the Big Game Hunter against it is the best way to play it.
You know what? Actually, when I think about the Thalnos, might be kind of like a bait to tell your opponent that you don't have a sweeper in your hand.
Oh, just to, sell a bad hand, so
Yeah.
get your opponent to commit and then Blade Flurry them down. Sure, it's possible. Definitely can't rule that out. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that was like when you see someone starting a turn with attack, like you're a warrior, right? And you start the turn with the attack from a minion, and then it's like, okay, bro.
Yeah.
But this time that wasn't the case.
Yeah, but again, Loatheb comes down, ton of pressure on Rogue. They're very rarely able to deal with Loatheb the turn that it's played down, so it's almost a 5/5 charge minion in a sense. Like it gets there on the board. It's usually able to attack at least once. So the Rogue is starting to come under pressure here, starting to have to find a way to deal with the threats from the Warrior, or they're going to be under threat of the burst combo anytime now.
So you can say that Loatheb is a better Strangenton Tiger.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Most of the times.
Yeah. It doesn't get Big Game Hunter after Handmaster. Ha!
I mean, Loatheb,
Wow.
Loatheb is a legendary for a reason. He's supposed to be stronger than a Strangleton Tiger, I suppose.
Exactly.
If that would be an epic, and you could have 2 Loathebs in your deck,
Damn.
wow,
Yeah.
that would be oppressive.
But yeah, the Boombot clearing out the Gnomish Inventor last turn was definitely kind of a big deal, because he drew the Battle Rage that turn, so there was the opportunity for him to start cycling some more cards if he wanted to, but he's a long way from doing that, and he's probably going to want to try and injure himself using that Death Spite that he has in hand before he starts activating that Battle Rage. But there's the charge, which means we're starting to get there. Starting to get there slowly but surely.
Too bad that the patrons are not copying the effects on the first minion too.
Yeah.
That would be still an option to use a charge in this deck, but in this situation, the turn for SilverName is pretty straightforward. You just play the weapon, the 4-drop, and go nuts with the damage. Because you know you have to charge, so you even if that's not a Vorgan in your hand, you can still charge auto minions and boost them with the Inner Rage and Taskmaster. You use one Taskmaster, I don't know if he has two.
Yeah, he used one.
It's an option, it's a valid option just to deal the damage. But especially after you saw the Belcher already being played.
Yeah, for sure. If you get in 9 to face here, like you said, you don't even need the full Worgen combo. It's just any minion plus charge starts to become a serious threat of lethal.
I would like to see a charging unstable goal lethal. It's like, I will kill you with this goal. It had one attack initially.
And even if SilverName didn't have it, didn't have the charge combo or something like something to threaten lethal, in which case it is charge. Zhivo, like just by the way SilverName played it, Zhivo will be afraid here. Zhivo might play more cautious than he would have if he knew what SilverName has, that he doesn't actually have lethal in his hand.
And a second agent.
Okay, I mean, it's a board clear if he wants it, but it would use up the resources of the Blade Flurry is the problem. So he's probably going to decide that if he uses his Flurry here, that's essentially conceding the game anyway, and he's just going to try and make a more solid play on the board. Yeah.
Okay, kind of surprised by that. I was feeling like, well, the Valid Teacher has a small value against those particular decks, though, like Warrior, where they have a lot of area effect damage spells, or weapons even, right? Yeah. That have the whirlwind effect, so you either play the Valid Teacher as soon as possible and just hope the opponent didn't draw it, or you just not play it at all, right? Yeah. So that's that is kind of like stuck in the hand. So the plan, but to win the game, Zhivo needs board presence. And it seems like he's always on the back foot for a long time.
Sure, so it looks like we are beginning the Battle Rage cycling this turn. He just fell a little bit short of being able to injure himself beforehand. Armor brought him back up to 4, but he was only 2 or 3 damage away from being able to get down to that 29 first, so he would have got the extra card draw. 29 for sure, indeed, Lothar. But so he'll just have to make do with 4 cards this turn instead of 6. I guess that's fine.
Battle Rage, 2 mana for 2 cards, still better than Arcane Intellect for the mage, which is like the most standard card in every card game. Use 3 resources to draw 2 cards is like the most common card to see across different game designs. So getting 2 cards for 2 mana seems like a really good deal.
Sure does. So go ahead and prep sprint.
Yeah. How does 4 cards for 4 mana sound?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good too.
Well, it's 4 cards for 4 mana and 2 cards. So it's basically 4 cards. It's 4 mana for 2 cards anyway.
Well, I mean, in that sense, then Arcane Intellect is 3 mana for 1 card.
Okay, never mind.
So let's not play silly number games. Important thing is he prep sprinted, and that's generally a pretty strong play. Fills his hand up with resources, and this again is another reason why he chose not to ball clear on the previous turn. There's a ball clear available, but it involved the Drake, the Deadly Poison, the prep, the Blade Flurry, and the SI7. So if he'd have used that prep, he then wouldn't have been able to prep sprint as a follow-up. And now we see he's in a pretty solid position with a 10-10 on the board, but against this many cards from a warrior.
Wait, is it lethal? That's lethal,
That's lethal, it has to be, yeah.
Worgen charge,
Worgen charge, Inner Rage, enough mana for the weapon as well. That's got to be it, yep. Few epic sacks.
But it's not 30.
No.
I played it when it was 30 damage,
okay,
right?
fair enough.
Well, I have my phone with me, so I can prepare it. Well, wait, that's now locked down.
It is, yeah.
We won't see it anymore.
That's the only Raging Worgen win we will see until at least the next round. So.
Yep. So SilverName locks down his patron / Worgen warrior.
Yep.
And now he's being left with his...
The mage. The mage, yeah.
Mage. Mage. Okay. Well, it can be both. Tempo Mage, it can be Freeze Mage, but he banned Warrior. So It
Yeah,
says to us he most likely has a freeze mage, right?
It can
Right.
still be both. Like Tempo Mage is also pretty weak against Control Warrior.
Do you think so? I mean, he's
Yeah.
weak against weapons.
It depends on the build, right? You can put things like Water Elemental in that helps the matchup a lot.
Oh, I like to duplicate that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really annoying for Wars to deal with, that's true.
But yeah, I'd agree with you. I think Control Warrior is still even slightly favored against Tempo Mage. They just have that kind of same thing where since Justicar came out, Control Warrior kind of gained this ability to just straight up outlast a bunch of decks, and Tempo Mage is one of them. They can just remove everything you play and just tank up to oblivion until you pass out of boredom and decide to play a different game of Hearthstone.
Zhivo really needed to win against that Warrior. Like, he really needed the Warrior to stay his SilverName's lineup, because let's say it is Freeze Mage, right? Then with Warlock and Rogue for Zhivo, he's
Right.
gonna have a really tough time against Freeze Mage with those classes.
I just wanted to ask you guys, what is the plan when you counter a freeze mage when you're playing a rogue? Because it doesn't look good on paper.
I mean, try and get a really strong minion draw early and time your Lothar perfectly. That's basically the only chance you have most of the time, but
So it's basically like Zoo.
it's like Zoo, yeah, very much so. But Rogue even less so, because Rogue is kind of finely tuned to kill people once, right? Like, whatever your combo finisher is, whether it's your Malagos finisher or your oil finisher, like, that's kind of your last hurrah, right? The last few resources in your hand and your opponent's dead. Against Freeze Mage, you quite often have to, like, kill them 3 times, so it doesn't...
And you can finish them off with the ping turn after.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So it does kind of rely on a little bit of creative strategy from the Rogue player. It can be done. Extra minions, like you said, like the Tomb Pillager, Sludge Belcher, Dr. Boom, that kind of strategy coming more into Rogue now helps out a little bit, I think, but still a tough matchup. Beak Up, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is all right, as long as you get the Freeze Mage low early, because there is a lot of ways for the Rogue to deal the final burst. Like, the freeze effects don't impact you as much as, let's say, a minion-based deck like Psycho Paladin or Zoo.
Sure.
So in this way, you are more likely to be able to finish the Freeze Mage, but you have to get there first. You have to pressure him, and the Rogue definitely has a harder time doing that compared to Zoo, for example.
Yeah. It's very situational as well, right? If you have to commit from a long way out, like say you burst them down from 20-ish in the first place and take them all the way down to popping the block, and suddenly you have no resources in hand, if the Freeze Mage, say, just does like defensive Alexstrasza at that point, then that's kind of just game over, because you can't build up the 15 again to do it. So
Or
it is
even
really
a single
situational.
ice barrier when you're not dead to eviscerate, right?
Right,
An
yeah.
example. And it might be a case because the rogue might have difficulty to set the HP amount of the mage after comboing to like 1 or 2 HP, right? And then it's a problem to finish him off if he has a way of upping up the health point.
Alright, so Zhivo does not know what this mage will be, but he expects his Warlock to stand a better chance against any type of mage he can face. So
Might be Reno Jackson Warlock, right? In this case.
could also be Zoo, I guess, because like depending on what you play against, right? If you play against Freeze Mage, then Rogue is gonna be bad. If you play against Tempo Mage, then Rogue is gonna be bad too. Zoo has a hard, like Warlock in general has a easier time dealing with Tempo Mage.
Yes.
So Warlock is gonna be played first, just in case it is Tempo Mage, I suppose.
Agreed, yeah. I think he accepts either way against Freeze Mage, he's going to have a rough time, but just in case it is Tempo, he throws his Zoo out there.
Actually, it's important to know if it's Tempo Mage or not, because then you know what kind of mulligan you need with the Rogue, which is more important to know than the Warlock, because the Warlock, I just need 2 drops, 1 drops, and that's it, right? But when you play the Rogue and you think about the matchup, it's like, I will need a different hand against the Tempo Mage, I will need a different hand against Freeze Mage. So it's a wise decision to pick the Warlock right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, do I need to deal with Mana Worm on turn 1, or do I need to just mulligan for minions so that I can be the guy asking the questions? Yeah, that's a really good point.
Okay, now let's see.
So, of course, we see SilverName does have the Freeze Mage, and Zhivo does have the Zoo. If it wasn't obvious before from the mulligans.
Yeah, so Zhivo is going to very quickly get the unfortunate news from his perspective that this is the rough matchup that he was scared of. He is going to have a hard time pushing through this last deck with his lineup.
Well, he has two nice cards. Oh wow, what an unfortunate mulligan for SilverName. He actually mulliganed away to Doomsayer and got hunted back.
I mean, early Doomsayer isn't the worst thing against Zoo. It can be punished, but sometimes you can get away with it, because if you do the turn 2 Doomsayer, which is quite often good against aggressive decks like, say, Face Hunter, Secret Paladin, etc. If you do it against Zoo, most of the time they're going to have Egg or Haunted Creeper, so they still kind of get some pressure on the board back afterwards. But it's not the worst thing in the deck to have in your opening hand.
That's a good point, actually. It's way better against Paladins, though.
Yes, it is.
Because the way of dealing with a Doomsayer that's played early on is like, well, I guess I can probably ignore it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what you can do. But for Zhivo right now, the peddler gave him an option between Abusive Surgeons and Flame Imps, because I kind of dismissed the Life Coach Impersonator right now, so just pick between those two guys. And I think Flame Imp is probably better, because you don't care about the health totals right now when you play against a Freeze Mage, because most likely you will die after an Alexstrasza turn, right? And you build more board presence on turn 2, and you have Abusive Surgeon which will pile on the damage anyway. The other thing that it's kind of important to have in mind, that if you have two 1 HP minions on the board, or multiple 1 HP minions on board, you kinda might push your opponent to be inefficient with his mana, and he will use his hero power instead of, an example, Arcane Intellect.
Sure.
On turn 3.
Yeah, there's a little bit concerned with the Flame Imp, because there is sometimes games with Zoo where you tap a bunch, you play a couple of Flame Imps, and suddenly like the Freeze Mage just says, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to start firing Burn at your face." Then like I skipped Alex, you've just got yourself down to 20 HP anyway. But yeah, it seems like a more consistent choice than the Abusive Sergeant in that situation, for sure.
That Void Walker was such an amazing pickup for Zhivo here. He not only does it allow him to play 2 1-drops in one turn here, but also it protects his 2 bigger minions from the Loot Hoarder right now. So that certainly was an amazing draw for Zhivo. And this way he gets to push more damage, which is important.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, the Loot Hoarder would deal just the damage to the Flame Imp, and Zhivo would have been pushed to use the Abusive Sergeant anyway this turn and just go face for the 4 damage, because in the long run it doesn't really matter. You just need the damage as soon as possible.
Right. SilverName did have a defensive option to respond to it if he did feel like relieving some of the pressure. He could have Frostbolted the Voidwalker out of the way and just slammed the Loot Hoarder into the Flame Imp, but he doesn't feel under enough pressure right yet, and this is generally the way that you do have to play as the Freeze Mage. Just disrespect the Zoo for the first few turns, let them have their damage, make sure you build up those AoEs that you need for the end game.
At the same time, with the Arcane Intellect obviously also is the more mana efficient play.
Yeah.
And also he digs for the Frost Nova that he really wants on turn 5 with the Doomsayer.
Exactly. Double Doomsayer in his hand now, so that Frost Nova draw is going to be hugely important when it comes out. Emperor not quite there yet, so the damage is starting to ramp up. He has a potential Frostbolt ping turn. This, if he wants, can clear out a lot of this damage from the board, get rid of the Voidwalker, the Abusive Sergeant, and the Flame Imp.
Seems like that's something he has to do here. I mean, he's facing down so much attack on the board of Zhivo, and he's already at 20 health. So it will be very tough for SilverName if he ignores this board.
Yep, very true. I guess he's considering the merits of potential Doomsayers, but the only other line of play appears to be the Frostbolt and Ping, and it looks like that's what we're going to end up with. Takes the total pressure that he's facing down to just 3 damage, which he can afford to deal with for a while still. But Defender of Argus is a nice drop here.
I was thinking about Doomsayer for a second. If it's valid just to drop it this turn. But it will just end up as a heal card instead of a clear the board card. Right?
Yeah,
but with Zoo, the most problematic thing is that they have Death Rattle minions that are like Hunt Creepers, Nerubian Eggs, and they are a great way of playing around the cards like Doomsayer.
For sure. So Forgotten Torch comes down. Such a nice addition to Freeze Mage that's cycled in now, because you get to use an early game removal spell that doesn't decrease the amount of damage overall in your deck, which is such an important thing for Freeze Mage.
But it kind of dilutes the chance of drawing a relevant card in the future, right? You need Alexstrasza, you need an Ice Block, you need an Emperor, an example, to win the game, and sometimes drawing the Fireball is not something that you need, right? And you basically add 1 card to your deck, and in card games, you don't want to have a bigger deck than your opponent, right? You want to have the chances of drawing the exact card you need at that point, and which is the most possible when you have like the lowest amount of cards in your deck.
Right. I think particularly aggro and combo decks, they'd happily play a 20 card, 15 card deck, whatever it is.
Definitely.
Like,
The only reason basically to play Forgotten Torch is to play 4 fireballs and potentially 4 fireballs in your deck, right? Because sometimes you have to use those fireballs to clear bigger minions, and then you just don't have the burst necessary to finish your opponent anymore.
Well, that's a costly Doomsayer.
It is, yeah. Brings out the power overwhelming, and he's going to choose to make the slightly weaker play on board in order to be able to keep his Haunted Creeper in its Death Rattle form so that he has some resilience still against AoE. So he could have chosen to use the power overwhelming the other way around, but yeah, chose to do it this way instead.
I think I like that.
I like it too, yeah.
Yeah, as you said, more resilience on the board means more damage if there's a clear coming out.
Yeah.
And you know, but on the other side, your opponent knows that you use 1 PO, you're left with 2 cards, your options were particularly bad, I would say, that turn, right? Because otherwise you would just slam a Doomguard instead, right? And just clear the minion with the help of a 2-attack minion already on board. So your opponent might just slam the Emperor this turn and ignore the minions. Because it's only 5 damage, and it will require a second Abusive Sergeant. Wait, you already saw 2. Right?
You saw 2 Abusive Sergeants, yes.
Yeah.
So the only
there's
option
only
to
one powerful.
Yeah, I like it.
1 PO and most likely no Doomguard already in hand.
Right, and this also sets up the possibility of Blizzard Doomsayer for next turn as well if he needs a board clear. So seems like a strong line. We see Sea Giant alongside the Big Game Hunter coming into this deck. So this seems to be the build of Zoo with a few more situational cards in it, lowering the consistency for some potential huge power turns with Sea Giant, Gormok, sometimes Enhanso Meccano.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
We had this discussion like so many times
We did,
already.
Yeah.
That I think like the Zoo is the perfect deck that shows you how aggressive board control deck looks like, because it values efficiency over synergy.
Right.
And even if it's synergy, then it's basis on making more creatures and not like, you know, just effects on the board anyway, right? So creatures like an Encanto Meccano are diluting a chance of having a really good situation on the board in the beginning of the game. And that's something that I think Zoo doesn't thrive on.
Right. Basically, you're trading like you're putting really powerful game-winning effects into your deck for when you're ahead, but you're making your ability to get ahead less consistent because you're diluting your draws with these situational cards. But it's a deck that's been doing very, very well recently. People have had a lot of success with it. Quite often carries Leroy in it as well, Ecop as a finisher instead of Doomguard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if you put those cards in, at the core, the deck is still the same, so it's still going to be very consistent. Not as consistent as the previous version, but still very, very consistent. And then having those potential power plays that can win the game on their own. The Sea Giant can win a game on its own sometimes. So having that potential just feels really rewarding sometimes.
It does. So I think SilverName just has to respect this 8-8 and just go with the Blizzard Doomsayer play that he set up on the previous turn with the Emperor. Unfortunately, that Alexstrasza wasn't caught in the Emperor, so he can't immediately follow it up, the huge tempo Doomsayer with the Alexstrasza, but he's put himself in a strong position
Oh,
here.
look at that! Wow, that was the only out for Zhivo to have.
He is 3 damage off lethal right now. No secret in play. He can owl his Sea Giant to deal the damage, so if he had a second power overwhelming in hand right now, it would have been GG, but still, owling on the
Giant
on
and
the Sea Giant and kill
right?
the Doomsayer looks like the play here.
And you would like to do that because if you have random effects in your deck that affect minions instead of like hero, like Knife Juggler, let's say Sylvanas, you would not like to have a chance to get that Doomsayer.
Right.
Like to deal the damage to the Doomsayer. You don't want to take control of the Doomsayer, so you want to kill it immediately if you have the chance. This is why you silence your own Giant instead.
The only reason to keep it alive for this deck would be to make Sea Giant cheaper.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but you only have 1 left, right? And you have 2 Knife Jugglers in the deck. Okay.
Oh look, he wants to keep it on the
He
board.
wants to keep it on the board.
Or maybe he doesn't know. Like, sometimes people don't know, but yeah, I think he actually does play into that possibility to draw that second Sea Giant, which is usually always a hefty cost to play in this matchup. So having this Doomsayer around is beneficial for Zhivo.
So the ice barrier comes down. He's going to Frost Nova to freeze, and now he can guarantee pulling the ice block here if he wants to cash in his Mad Scientist this turn, but he might just decide to go face with it and put a bit of pressure on.
I would value just going out to the face, deal as much damage as possible. Look at that as an Abdugger. And you have potential ways of killing... Oh wait, there's a second Abusive Surgeon. So I was wrong about the 2 Abusive Surgeon already being played.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, it's because we saw one as a peddler option.
Exactly,
Yeah,
we saw one as an
yeah,
option.
my bad.
So there's a chance that SilverName will just ignore the minions on board and be super aggressive with his own minions, right?
Yeah.
Let's say next turn will just be Alexstrasza face of the Warlock and just deal 3 damage to his face, so that puts the Warlock on 12.
Sure.
You have Pyroblast ready in hand and 8, 10, 11 damage on board, which has to be dealt with by the zoo, right? We know there's a big game hunter.
I mean, remember, I believe that secret in play is barrier and not block. So he probably won't be able to be that aggressive. He'll if he Alex's face
But
next
that's 20
turn.
HP.
It's 20, but there's 10 on the board right now plus the minions he's about to play. So it's going to be pretty scary. I think, you know, if you Alex face next turn, you are going to have to. You can't play the big game hunter, buddy.
Unfortunately,
you can't do that. You can no, you can't. There we go.
Yeah. Well, that. Oh my!
Too late.
Oh,
the
that's a
nerves.
disaster. That's an absolute disaster for Zhivo.
He forgot that he has to target something with the big game hunter.
Yep.
And now he got punished for thinking too long.
Wow, that was a good call that he didn't click it.
Right.
That would have been disastrous. But the Knife Jugger now without any kind of effect on the board, and it's kind of like a crucial card in those matchups when the damage to the face with a Knife Juggler might turn out the game around. That might just turn the game around 180.
Right, agreed. So now, suddenly, that big game hunter that was kind of a troll last turn is going to show a bit of value here.
Well, seems like a good option, but for the Zoo, it's not over yet. He's at 14 life.
There's only
And
2 cards in hand for the Priest Mage, so that could be anything bad, really.
But he has like 3 turns to get the damage done. And your opponent has only like 2 turns to deal the damage. And then it's Ice Block. So still far away for Zhivo to deal the lethal damage that he needs to get done.
The downside of getting Alexstrasza here is for Zhivo is that he just cannot life tap ever again. Every damage he takes now is essential.
Right, and he also has to consider leaving enough space on his board for, say, potential Lotheb draws that might be able to win him the game, which is why it looks like he's probably going to pass up the opportunity this turn. Because playing Imgang Boss, if the Mage player is smart, you can just ping one of the Imgang Bosses and fill the board. So.
And then, you know, you have no way of clearing the board, even with a PO. You can't play Void Terror too to make plays.
That's game, right?
Well, you just... I would say you can even Arcane Intellect.
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet, yeah.
Wait, why not quite?
Because you can't set up lethal this turn and ping a minion to block Lotheb, so there's still outs. Right?
But
Even if you ping face, it's not lethal.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to ping next turn with a Pyroblast. I mean,
but
SilverName's
you
just
deal
gonna
3
go...
damage, you deal 4 damage this turn.
Forgotten Torch ping face is...
That
puts him to
was
10.
my initial plan. You
Oh
just
yeah, for some reason I thought Pyroblast deals 9.
Yeah, no.
because it's for 9
I saw the
mana.
9. I saw the 9 there. It's
Emperor
9
Thorasson,
9
reduce the damage of all your cards by 1. Yeah.
Yeah, 9 mana, 9 damage. Why not?
Makes sense, right?
Makes sense.
Blizzard, take notes.
So yeah, I mean, the Forgotten Torch face ping face plan is real. It's just he does allow the opportunity for Lotheb to come down in that situation. He can't set up the 100% lockout guaranteed.
This is why I would favor the Arcane Intellect this turn, to see more options. Maybe you have...
oh no, this is fine. This is fine. Because if Lotheb comes down here, you can still cast Forgotten Torch ping anyway. You have 10 mana. That
oh yeah,
combination
that's a
has
good
10
point.
manas,
Very good point.
Yeah, classic overthinking Hearthstone.
But what if
there, getting way
Kazan
too
came
deep.
down?
Kazan Mystic!
Then you probably lose the game anyway, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for Zhivo. He doesn't know it yet, but he feels it. Like, he feels the chill.
Yeah, he can feel it deep in his bones. When you get Pyroblasted in the face while there's an ice block up, you're pretty confident that the game is over. But yeah, thankfully SilverName didn't overthink it as hard as I did and came up with it. So this looks like SilverName is going to be our first winner.
Yeah,
like
looks
so.
like it.
He will advance to the top 4, but still the turn is on Zhivo's side. He needs to click that end turn button and seal his fate.
Will we see a miraculous misclick here?
Nope. No, we got it.
Forgotten Torch.
So there's the Forgotten Torch, and followed up with a hero power, SilverName, the ladder monster, the Russian streamer. It takes down our first game here at ESL Legendary Series. Congrats to him. He will be making his way through to the round of 4.
With a convincing 3-1 win. Like, the only loss he took was against a Druid, which is kind of like accounted to, right?
Yeah.
You kind of will lose to Druid at some point.
Yeah,
Most of the games.
I talked about, like, you know, there's no such thing as like a good loss, but there's an unimportant loss.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Losing to Druid, you kind of feel like, all right, that was probably going to happen. I was probably going to lose a game to Druid at some point. So.
Yay!
There's AKA Wonder on your screen, enjoying himself, getting ready for his game later. So he's probably enjoyed watching that, scouting out some of his opposition. He has a bit of information about the deck list now. So.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
There's actually a lot of people in the audience, and welcome back.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Nims.
Hey!
He said it to himself.
Suddenly, Nimch.
I do welcome myself back in,
Yep.
and that was a pretty cool game overall. And SilverName showing a lot of skill in that matchup, only losing the 50-50 Druid, and bringing a really interesting Worgen deck as well, the Patron Worgen hybrid.
Yes. Something we've seen a little bit of recently. People are trying to get some of that bite back into the Patron Warrior, some of that really oppressive burst damage. So something that people have been messing around with a little bit, and it's starting to become more of a tournament impact now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, players have brought it to tournaments. Like we mentioned before, Crane in the Class Legends tournament brought this deck to big success. He almost won the whole tournament with it.
Yeah, and he had such a huge, tremendous success with against the Priest, but it didn't turn out like in the final game.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, but this is the moment about SilverName. He just advanced to the top 4 of ESL Legendary Series here in IAM Katowice, and we should probably bring him here, right?
Yeah, he's probably walking right now. So we will see him in just a moment. Ekop, thank you so much for joining us at the desk whenever he comes. He's here, he's here.
Yeah, all right.
So Ekop will leave us for a moment, and we'll welcome SilverName joining us for a player interview. I want to learn more about him.
I want to learn more about the owl. Never mind SilverName. The owl that silenced me briefly. I want to know what's up with that.
Anyway, the owl that was not played during the game, because we saw an owl being brought by Zhivo with the top deck, right?
Yeah, very true.
But we have SilverName here, right? With there's an owl too.
There you go. See?
All right.
SilverName is joining us at the desk here. Nimsh,
And just for a moment.
follow the interview, please.
Definitely. SilverName, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. So congratulations on winning your first match. You advanced
you.
to the top 4. That was really nicely played. And I think Solo cannot wait to ask the owl question.
Yeah, what's the deal with it? It's just a mascot or
This is my talisman.
Can you show
Yeah?
it? Like, can you
Okay.
show it? Actually, can you?
So,
All right. So that's
Nice.
an Iron Beak owl. Is it Iron Beak or is it like?
Huh?
Okay.
It
No, it's
might
like
have a
the
different name in
color of the beak. Like. How
He doesn't have name.
okay.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
talisman. All right. Well, there was a silence in the game, Zoo versus Freeze Mage, but you still took that one pretty convincingly. But can you tell us your Worgen list, your Patron Worgen? Why do you think it's better than the standard list?
Worgen Warrior have a lot of version for win, because Worgen is instant lethal for 20 damage, 25, but standard pattern doesn't have it.
So
With
you
Gro-
play it instead of the Gromash, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. And can you tell viewers more about yourself? Because I know you test versus Pavel, right?
Yes.
You test with Pavel, and you also almost qualified for BlizzCon last year, I believe, for the European Championships.
Yes, yes.
So is there anything else you want to tell about yourself? Like, you play a lot of Hearthstone, right?
Yes, yes. I play on guitar. I play on Hearthstone every day for 5-6 hours and guitar too. But I had a problem with my handbag, and I can't play a lot on guitar.
Oh,
All right. But
That's
now you can
bad.
play a lot of Hearthstone,
Yes.
and you're really good at it.
Thank you.
Guys, do you have any other questions for SilverName?
As I said, do you feel confident in the tournament? Do you consider yourself, on a par with, say, like AKA Wonder, the people that have won a lot of tournaments in the past, done well? Do you consider yourself a player with the potential to win this tournament, or are you just looking to do well?
Win, of course.
Okay, good. No, I like
That's
it.
the proper
Nice.
mindset. Yeah, I like
That's
that.
good. I wanted that answer.
Yeah.
Nice. Good job.
Definitely. All right, so SilverName is the first person to advance to the top 4. Congratulations again. And right now we're going into a short break. We need to prepare the next match for you guys, so stay tuned for more Hearthstone after a short break.
One of the newest additions